Bank of England cuts main interest rate to 4.25%. Putin and Xi sign statement to deepen comprehensive strategic partnership. And Trump announces major trade agreement with Britain, promising mutual benefits. Welcome to the Economic Bulletin, and we start off with Europe, where the Bank of England has cut its main interest rate by 0.25% points to 4.25%, despite a split among policymakers. The Monetary Policy Committee voted 5-4 in favour of the cut, with 2 members advocating for a larger 0.5% reduction, while others preferred to maintain current rates. This decision marks the Bank of England's first rate cut since US President Donald Trump announced tariffs on April the 2nd, which have contributed to global economic uncertainty. The bank noted that these tariffs are expected to weigh on British economy growth and reduce inflation, although the outlook remains unclear. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey commented on the bank rate cut, highlighting the need for a gradual and careful approach to future interest rate cuts given the unpredictable nature of the global economy. Bailey noted that the impact of these tariffs on the British economy should not be overstated, but acknowledged that it contributed to a challenging economy environment. The Bank of England has indicated that it will remain flexible in its approach to monetary policy, adapting to changing economic conditions as necessary. As an expectation, predicting a peak of 3.5% this year, down from 3.75%. It also anticipates inflation will return to its 2% target by early 2027 and forecasts economic growth of 1% for this year.
The impact on trade seems to be more in goods than services. The disinflation process in the UK economy has continued. UK inflation was 2.6% in the latest data for March. That's above our 2% target, but it's a little bit lower than expected. So with the progress we have made, we can take another step in making monetary policy less restrictive. So today we've cut bank rate by 0.25 percentage points to 4.25%. As the past few weeks demonstrate, the global economic environment remains an uncertain one. Interest rates are not on autopilot. They cannot be. Instead, the MPC must continue to respond carefully to the evolving economic circumstances and the outlook for inflation in the UK. Whatever happens, the MPC will continue to set bank rate to ensure that inflation returns sustainably to the 2% target in the medium term.
The Institute of Economic and Social Research has reported that British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves is likely to miss her budget targets again. The report highlights that weaker than expected economic growth could result in the government spending £57 billion more than it collects taxes by the 2029-30 tax year. Reeves has committed to balancing the current budget by the end of decade, relying on taxation to fund non-investment spending. However, her recent tax increase on employers has contributed to a narrower margin to meet fiscal targets, leaving only £10 billion for flexibility.
We don't want to see an escalation of tariffs. We want to do a deal that supports the UK economy.
The European Commission proposed the countermeasures and up to 95 billion euros of US imports if negotiations with Washington fail to resolve ongoing tariff disputes. The measures would target US products such as wine, fish, aircraft and machinery. The Commission is launching a long consultation for EU members and businesses before finalizing its decision. Currently, the EU faces 25% tariffs on steel, aluminium and cars from the US, along with 10% reciprocal tariffs on nearly all other goods, which may increase to 20% after July the 8th. The EU has expressed a preference for negotiated solutions, but is preferring to retaliate measures if necessary. US Vice President J.D. Vance noted ongoing discussions aimed at improving trade relations between the United States and Europe. The Federal Statistics Office has reported that German exports rose by 1.1% in March, driven by increased US demand ahead of looming tariffs, surpassing expectations of 1%. Imports fell by 1.4%, resulting in a trade surplus of 21.1 billion euros in March, up from 18 billion euros in February. Exports to EU countries grew by 3.1%, while those to the United States increased by 2.4%. Additionally, Germany industrial production surged by 3%, significantly exceeding forecasts, indicating potential recovery in the sector. The National Institute of Statistics and Geography has reported that Mexico's annual inflation rate for April was reported at 3.93%, aligning with market expectations and up from 3.8% in March. This figure remains within the Bank of Mexico's target range, potentially allowing for continued interest rate reductions. Consumer prices rose 0.33% in April, while core inflation reached 3.93% year-on-year. The central bank, known as the Banxico, recently lowered its interest rate 50 basis points to 9%, the lowest since September 2022. Analysts anticipate further easing if inflation stabilizes, with the next decision set for May the 15th. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping signed a statement aimed at deepening their comprehensive strategic partnership. Putin emphasized that the relationship is self-sustaining and committed to increasing the use of their national currencies and mutual settlements. This agreement reflects both nations' intent to enhance economic ties and reduce reliance on Western currencies, promoting financial independence and geopolitical tensions. The partnership is expected to facilitate greater cooperation in trade and investment, especially in sectors such as energy and technology. Additionally, Putin announced that a series of documents, including an updated investment agreement, will be signed later today. This updated agreement aims to further strengthen the economic collaboration established since their strategic alliance in early 2022, positioning both countries to navigate a complex global economic landscape more effectively. The Labor Department has reported that the number of Americans filing new unemployment claims fell by 13,000 to 228,000 for the week, ending May the 3rd, exceeding expectations. Despite the decline, concerns remain as President Trump's tariffs, including a 145% increase on Chinese imports, have negatively impacted business and consumer sentiment. Economists warn that this could soon affect employment data, The unemployment rate remained at 4.2% in April, with the median during of joblessness rising to 10.4 weeks. The economy added 177,000 jobs in April, but ongoing economic uncertainty is causing hesitance in hiring. The U.S. Federal Reserve announced maintaining the target range for the federal fund rates at 4.25 to 4.5%, in line with market expectations. This decision marks the third consecutive time since January the Fed has kept rates unchanged. In a statement following a two-day meeting, the Federal Open Market Committee noted that uncertainty about the economic outlook has increased further, citing risks of higher unemployment and rising inflation as key factors influencing its decision. The Fed emphasized its commitment to carefully assessing economic data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks to determine the timing and extent of any future rate adjustments. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell underscored the importance of the central bank's independence in light of President Donald Trump's recent calls for rate cuts. Powell indicated that such external pressures do not influence the Fed's operations. He also maintained that the central bank's primary focus will always be on fostering maximum employment and price stability for the American public. Powell also noted that the Fed's decision-making process is guided only by economic data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks, reaffirming that political commentary does not impact their approach.
Doesn't affect our doing our job at all. So we're always going to do the same thing, which is we're going to use our tools to foster maximum employment and price stability for the benefit of the American people. We're always going to consider only the economic data, the outlook, the balance of risks, and that's it. That's all we're going to consider. So it really doesn't affect either our job or the way we do it. I'm on that. The administration is entering into negotiations with many countries over tariffs. We'll know more with each month that goes by where tariffs are going to land. And we'll know what the effects will be when we start to see those things. So we think we'll be learning. I can't tell you how long it will take, but for now it does seem like it's a fairly clear decision for us to wait and see and watch.
U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that the upcoming trade agreement with Britain will be full and comprehensive, solidifying the long-standing relationship between the two countries and nations. He expressed that this deal will strengthen the long-standing relationship between the two nations. In a post on the Truth Social platform, Trump mentioned the honor of having the United Kingdom as the first country to finalize a trade agreement. He highlighted the historical ties and also the elegance between the US and the UK, suggesting that this announcement marks a pivotal moment. Trump also hinted at more trade deals in advanced stages of negotiation, stating that others would follow soon.
President Trump, can you get a peace deal done in Ukraine? Yes. How confident are you, sir?
Mr. Prime Minister, will you get a backstop, will you?
I do need to.
The answer is yes. On behalf of our wonderful First Lady, Melania, and myself.
US President Donald Trump has announced a significant trade agreement with Britain, emphasizing mutual benefits and detailing that final arrangements will be made in the coming weeks. Trump highlighted that the tariffs protect the US economy and that the agreement will foster an economic security alliance with Britain. Additionally, it aims to create a trading zone for aluminium and steel, along with a secure supply chain for medicines. The U.S. Trade Secretary has announced that the deal will provide $5 billion in opportunities for American exporters. He confirmed that the existing 10% tariffs will remain unchanged and highlighted that the United Kingdom plans to purchase Boeing aircraft worth $10 billion.
Change the way things work. So here's what we've got. We've opened up new market access, ethanol, beef, machinery, all the
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has stated that the agreement with the United States will strengthen trade and safeguard jobs. He emphasized that both nations are aligned in their alliance. Starmer noted that incorporating trade and economics will deepen US-UK relations. He also affirmed that the trade agreement fulfills its promise to protect British automotive and steel industries. Starmer has stated that Britain is sending a message to the world that it is open for business. He also confirmed that all tariff reductions for the economic agreement with the United States will take effect as soon as possible. He also emphasized that the deal boosts British companies and saves thousands of jobs, describing the trade agreement as beneficial for both nations.
Say, I've delivered on the promise I made to you. And that's why as soon as I knew this deal was coming in today, I said I want to come.
The British government has stated that the trade agreement with the United States provides British farmers with unprecedented market access while maintaining food safety standards. They also noted that efforts will continue on remaining sectors such as pharmaceuticals and outstanding reciprocal tariffs. Now we move to a live broadcast from Moscow, where Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi arrives at the Kremlin to take part in celebrations marking the 80th anniversary of the Victory Day of Russia. Joining us from Paris is Director of the EU Asian Centre, Meher Nicolas Ferzilli, to discuss the announced trade deal between the United States and the UK. Welcome, sir, to Qnews Economic Bulletin, and it's always a pleasure to have you with us on the show, sir. Sir, what does the United States and the United Kingdom trade deal represent as President Donald Trump's first signed trade agreement in his second term, symbolically and economically?
Delighted to join you today.
My pleasure.
Clearly, it is a symbolic victory for Trump. It's even a big win for Trump. Why? Reasons. To make a long story short, it's coming earlier than expected. So most experts knew that there was some kind of trade agreement cooking between London and Washington very discreetly. But most people expected that agreement to be announced at best sometime around the middle or end of June. So clearly having it done, it's a done deal, right? is a big policy win for America because it shatters even further the anti-Trump discourse we were hearing in Paris, Berlin, and Brussels. So many so-called experts, in Germany, the European Commission, France, were mocking President Trump 1 month ago when he announced these very aggressive, tariffs onto the world. And of course, for Trump, it was always a negotiation technique. So when he announced very brutally 4 weeks ago these tariffs onto the world, he knew that in the following weeks he would make adjustments. But the Europeans very, very naively, really, they took him in a literal way, right? Which is a mistake, And so the fact that he was able, after, 2 weeks or 3 weeks of very chaotic, the first 2 weeks, we have to remember, the first 2 weeks after Trump's announcement a month ago were extremely chaotic. Financial markets the world over crumbled, and the NASDAQ and the S&P 100, the New York Stock Exchange, collapsed for 2 weeks. So, the Trump's enemies in China and the European Commission were laughing at him. And in the past 10 days, surely, slowly but surely, Trump has been making a comeback. And so after, 10 days of small wins, this is a big win for Trump. It's in the bag. The UK deal is in the bag. And Britain is one of the 3 biggest economies in Europe. It is also one of the 8 biggest economies in the world. So having ticked the London box gives more credibility to Trump. It's clearly a policy win for him.
So what are the key economic sectors expected to benefit the most from this US-UK trade deal, especially in agriculture and manufacturing? And of course, it was mentioned by the Secretary during the U.S. Trade Secretary during this conversation, the phone conversation that took place between U.S. President Donald Trump and United Kingdom, of course, Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Great question. So clearly on both sides, today there's celebration. So why is there celebration? Because they are both telling internally, domestically, their own public opinion, how great they are and how great the trade deal is. But part of what they are telling their own people is propaganda. Part of it is true. So what is true? So what is good?
Is this a trajectory or is this reality from your own perspective and narrative?
It is a reality, but
a reality, not trajectory.
No, it's a reality. But of course, they brag beyond the reality. So what is the reality? So where are American producers winning? Clearly in the food industry, right? So what the American call Corn Belt. So for the U.S. industry, both vegetable, corn, meat packers, meat, ethanol, natural gas, oil, it is a big victory. What is England? What is Britain winning? We're clearly British exporters of aluminum, steel, car parts, machine equipment are winning a lot. More importantly, big UK companies like Land Rover, Rolls-Royce, and British Aerospace are winning a lot, and they are reassured because punitive tariffs from Washington onto the UK would have broken the back of Land Rover, Rolls-Royce, BAE Systems, very important industrial companies in Britain. Now they are saved, and not only are they saved, they're gaining privileged access to that huge market, which is America. On the flip side, American farmers were very important supporters and donors to President Trump's presidential campaign 6 months ago. And so he is rewarding symbolically and financially one of the biggest voting blocs which backed him, the Corn Belt, right? The farmers, the dairy farmers, the meat packers, they are very happy today. One last remark, if I may. There's a lot of theater behind what happened. Once again, it's a big win for America. it shows British pragmatism. Keir Starmer has proved to be extremely flexible and pragmatic. So he doesn't like President Trump on a personal level. And in terms of, ideas and culture and politics, Trump represents everything Keir Starmer doesn't like in life. However, he was extremely pragmatic, and he followed the best solution, the best outcome for the UK economy, putting ideas and politics aside, which is a sign of intellectual maturity from the part of the Brits.
So he put his country first. Sir, what specific opportunities will the $5 billion in potential benefits for American exporters entail under the new trade deal announced by the U.S. Trade Secretary?
So these figures are to be taken with a pinch of skepticism. No one knows precisely. So would it be 5 or 10? It doesn't matter. So it's good for certain sectors of the U.S.
You said skepticism, sir?
Yeah, because it can be more. So it can be more, it can be a little less.
I think you see it more.
Yeah, I see it more. I think it's a net positive.
If you think it's spectrism, then you see it more.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's going to be more. It's a net positive for a simple reason. In reality, Britain and America are not frontal competitors, and their economies are quite complementary. So a trade deal between friends, the same culture, ethnic family, and they have the same culture, language, and they have complementary things to export and import, on average, is easier. What I'm coming at with Germany or China, things will be more complicated. It doesn't mean that it would be impossible, but the next trade deal...
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. Do you see that the trade deal that took place between the United Kingdom and the United States today is making things more tougher for Germany and other countries? This is what you're saying?
I'm saying the details of the trade deals with the European Union and China will be more complicated, much more difficult to reach, and they will take more time. But at the same time, I think it's going to put pressure on Europe. So I think having in the bag, England, Britain is a done deal. It's in Trump's bag. Having it done so quickly and successfully, that will put more pressure on the European Union, on Germany and Ireland notably. And Europe now, the problem, why did Starmer rush to Washington and sign the trade deal? Britain and the European Union, all of Europe, they have a very difficult economic growth problem. Their GDP growth engine is broken. They need to jumpstart their GDP growth engine, their industrial growth engine. So that's why Keir Starmer was desperate to do a deal, in spite of...
Got your point, sir. Sir, how does the decision to maintain the existing 10% tariffs impact this agreement, sir? And additionally, how does this plan for the United Kingdom to purchase $10 billion worth of Boeing aircraft fit to the overall trade strategy? And as you said, it's cooked, and today they're revealing all that's taking place, and in the next weeks, of course. But most important, of course, is the 10% question.
Because it's we have to go beyond the figure. So basically, when they have to purchase 10 billion, for example, worth of Boeing aircrafts and spare parts, let's remember that what is inside the belly, when you open the belly of a Boeing aircraft, there are a lot of very expensive parts manufactured in London by BAE, British Aerospace, and Rolls-Royce. So when they buy for $10 billion worth of Boeing products, inside that 10 billion figure, they may be 4 or 5 or 6 billion worth of Rolls-Royce, Land Rover, BAE system equipment. So this is the beauty of it. In reality, it's a win-win for the UK and the US, because their economies are already intimately interconnected, and they're not frontal competitors. So they don't hunt in the same forest, if you will. So because they are not frontal aggressive competitors, because their economies are quite complementary, that deal was quite nice.
Thank you, Mr. From Paris, that was director of the EU Asian Center, Meher Nicolas Ferzili. Always a pleasure, sir, to have you with us, and of course your informative, valuable insights. That brings us to the end of our economic bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. Bank of England cuts main interest rate to 4.25%. Putin and Xi signed a statement to deepen comprehensive strategic partnership. And Trump announces major agreement with Britain, promising mutual benefits. This concludes our economic bulletin. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for more coming up here on Qnews.